All right, I'm honored to have returning guest, third time, Pam Lanhart, on the podcast today. Pam is the founder and executive director of Thrive Family Recovery Resources, which is a nonprofit organization that recognizes families are a critical component of recovery. And Thrive brings hope, help, and healing to families of loved ones struggling with substance use disorder by providing resources, peer support, education, advocacy, and healing connections with compassion, understanding, and love. And Pam has a special place in my heart because I really admire watching the work that she does. And I've watched her go through such difficult things over the last couple of years while being very honest about what's going on in her life, but also continuing to live a purposeful life that is open to joy when it's there to experience. And the reason I wanted to have Pam on today is just to talk about that because so many parents feel like they can't experience joy when their kids are struggling with substance use. And it feels like impossible to believe that they could be any happier. And I thought you were the perfect person to come on and talk about that today. So thank you for making the time for the podcast and to share your story with us.
Yeah, thank you, Heather. And Heather and I just have such a common bond because we have both experienced the loss of our child. So we were chatting about this podcast today and what, how do we show up and how do we continue to show up? Even the way I like to look at this is there's waves that come, and some of the waves they just are all consuming. And even though our grief at this point is the grief of losing a child, there's plenty of grief in substance use, and there's so much loss. And how do we survive the waves that are consuming us, the 10-foot ones that are coming one after another? And we were just chatting about what that looks like. Resiliency in practice really is what we're kind of talking about today.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think that sometimes parents feel like they shouldn't have to work at it. Like that, how we know we expect to work at physical health. Like if we want to run a marathon, we expect to train for it. But for some reason, we don't have that same expectation with mental health. I know I put a lot of work into my mental health, and I'm curious about you, like how hard you work at your mental fitness.
Yeah. Um, one of the things that I talk about with our community at Thrive is family recovery. So we think about that our loved one has to get well and they go to treatment and, they do the work, they learn how to function in life without drugs and alcohol. And our work and our recovery really is about functioning in life without staying addicted to the person that is addicted. So the Heather, you're right. Like the last 3.5 years have been incredibly difficult, not just with my son's death, but also we have a daughter who was rushed to the ER in February of 2024. She's the mother of 10 children, and she had an 8 by 8 centimeter tumor in her brain. And she has incurable terminal brain cancer. And then my husband, 6 months later, we his PSA was high, and we went into the doctor, and sure enough, he has prostate cancer. And, sometimes I'm like, if I didn't have bad luck, I wouldn't have any luck at all. It was, it's stage 4. So it's metastasized and it's was in his lymph nodes. And that's been kind of part of the process. And then you also have life, right? So you have other things, your own health issues, maybe a different child's health issues. I have a mother that has dementia. And so on top of all of these other things, we're dealing with that. And when you think about how do we get through that? How do we stay steady in the middle of all of these, you know, tornadic activities that are happening around you? And for me, having been impacted by substance use all of my life with my parents, my siblings, and my son, it's my own personal recovery. And so I just wanted to preclude your question with that background. When you look in the dictionary, recovery says a return to health and well being or reclaiming something that you lost. And so staying well for us or getting well for us is reclaiming the things that we've lost in our life or returning to the well-being that we know will keep us grounded and healthy. Now, for some people, they've never had that. They don't know what that looks like because maybe they grew up in an environment that was very problematic, very unsafe, chaotic, conflictual. And so you might like I didn't know because my parents were we lived in a constant state of feeling trauma because of their arguing, fighting, and drinking. And so this for me was a discovery process that started long before Jake died, right? And those things that I learned and the practices that I adopted, we are working on we finished a documentary for family recovery and we almost titled it The Work because we talk about the work, like what is the work in recovery? Your loved one goes to treatment. What's my work? Right. And so for me, it's holistic. So it's mental, emotional, spiritual, financial. Um, it might be occupational, like mission, purpose, meaning. So it's all of these parts and parcels that add up to, me being able to weather the storms, right? And then within that, these practices become routine. They become something that I pay attention to every single day.
Yeah, I can relate to not knowing what living in an emotionally healthy environment is like. I didn't know that I didn't know until I experienced some living in a healthier environment. I think my minimum baseline was pretty stressful. And so then I just went out and got in more stressful situations. And it's been a lot of learning about myself and developing those same, finding ways to have it be a part of my day, like every day, but not feel like work, finding things that I enjoy that make me feel emotionally healthy and setting that example. I had that realization at one point, like, I want my daughter to go do all of these things and to work on herself, but I'm not doing it. And I really don't even have any idea what I'm asking of her. Did that ever occur to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the aha moment for me early on was what I call alignment, which is that I wanted to show up as a good mother. I wanted to show up. I remember watching something on TV and the kids were like, my mom is the best person in the whole world. And I just wanted my kids to say that about me, right? I wanted my kids to feel uh, that I was supportive, that I was connected, that I was safe, that I was healthy. And I remember during Jake's substance use, just being all over the place, unpredictable. I was listening to a trauma podcast at one point. I can't remember which one it was. And they said the worst trauma is the trauma of inconsistency. That for kids, when a parent is and even in a relationship, like when you think about abusive narcissistic relationships, it's, I love you. I need you, and this is your fault, and it's always been your fault. Or, I love you, but in yelling, screaming, telling, crazy making. And the question in my mind was, how do I align? What do I do so that I can show up in a way that is always consistent and always predictable? Now, am I perfect about this? No, not at all. Right. I typically have to go make an amends to somebody once a week or so. Right. Um, so for me, there's practices that I've introduced into my life that are supporting my desire to show up in a consistent way, regardless of what is happening in my life.
Mhm. And I think you do a great job of balancing, honoring that you're going through hard things, and I have gratitude and I have hope. So what's behind that for you? How do you do that?
Um, well, first of all, I think fun and adventure have always been a part of our family culture. And there's a saying right now that's really popular. It's okay to not be okay. And we want to name our feelings and we want to not hide them and we want to be really transparent. And if you follow me on Facebook, you know that that is the way I live my life. But it's also okay to be okay. And when your loved one is struggling, it feels like a betrayal. There's a saying I have read that a mother is only as happy as their saddest child. And that feels so problematic to me. It just has never been the way that I wanted to live my life. And I don't really know where that came from, but I do know that when I when I have practices that help me to feel good, it's like the dopamine in my life when I'm doing things that release dopamine, that release serotonin, that wash and flood my brain with warm thoughts, connection, good things. I show up differently. And I think we can all identify that, right? Like, I'm a much happier person when I get a walk in. I'm a much happier person when I journal and have my coffee in the morning, or I'm a much more pleasant person to be around when I journal and have my coffee in the morning. And I feel more connected to people when I'm intentional about creating um, opportunities to have fun, to do fun things, creating memories and experiences. And we did that with Jake before he passed away. And I think that's the key that we're talking about here is, um, I don't know what's going to happen with your loved one, but I know that I'm still here. And I know that the reason I'm here is because I did the work. Right.
Mhm. Yeah. That's the only guarantee is no matter what we do, there's no guarantees. Um, and yet, but I know the one thing I can guarantee is what I'm willing to do and how I show up and who I want to be in this. And I don't know about you, but it gives me so much peace that I did the work when I got the opportunity. That once I had that opportunity to change and learn and grow and become that mom you were talking about, the mom you wanted to be, I have so much peace of mind in knowing that I took that opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. And as you said, when we show up well, we're modeling it for our kids. I have three living children, and my youngest, who was engaged with our family and did dialectical behavioral therapy with us and has done trauma therapy and has lived with us since Jake's addiction. She's the one I have the best relationship with, you know. And so what I feel about that is, and the other day she sent me a text and she was sending me like 12 texts. And she's like, sorry to text bomb you, mom, but you're my anchor.
Oh,
You're my anchor. And that feels like how I want to show up. That feels like I'm accomplishing what I want. Not that relationships should ever become a checkbox. Um, but like for me, relationship is everything. Why are we here on this earth? Right? We're not going to die with our stuff. We're in relationship and we're here to impact. We're here to be salt and light. We're here to be a change maker. I mean, I think everyone is. So I've kind of identified a few things that I have done in my life that helped me in the, worst times right after Jake died and, after our daughter was diagnosed, and I keep going back to those things. So I thought maybe I could just kind of share
yeah,
a few of those bullet points, right?
please do.
Yeah. So the first one is really what I call routines. And routines bring us comfort. So when we're busy and we're out of our routine, we're going to be the most easily activated, right? And I've talked to families where they indicate that their loved one calls them when they know they're really busy because then now it's easier to be manipulated when, just like I'm in the middle of something, get off my back. And that's when I tend to uh like become dysregulated is when I just am juggling 1,000 balls and I have 18 million things on my plate. So that practice of routine, which looks different for everybody. So all of these practices I think are like different it's person centered. No one size fits all. So routine for me looks like getting up in the morning, grabbing a cup of coffee, sitting on my chair. I journal to Jake because I just love talking to him every morning. The farther away you get from your loved one's death, the less you hear their name, the less you look at their pictures. The sometimes a day can go by and I'm like, oh, I haven't like acknowledged Jake, which would feel like the worst thing in the world. So I write his name down. Hey Jake, good morning. And then in that there's gratitude practices, right? What happened yesterday or today that I'm really super grateful for? And not big trite things like I'm grateful that I have a roof over my head. It's like the small things that we want to notice every day because when we notice the small things that we're grateful for, we're going to get a rush of dopamine and serotonin.
Mhm.
So routine is probably the kind of one of the main things and sticking with that routine, which was I drink a lot of water every day. I get out and do physical exercise every day. I have these, spiritual practices of journaling. I have a routine of even just my bedtime routine. Like I put my hair in a shower cap and I jump into the shower and I rinse off at the end of the day and wash my face. And like that feels right to me when I crawl into bed and I feel fresh, right? And so I think we all sort of intuitively know what's going to feel right to us, but doing those things on the daily make my life comforting and consistent.
Mhm. Yeah, I think I feel a sense of safety in my routines, and the best part about a routine is like when everything, when the tornado comes, that you don't have to think about it. It's just like I go walk every morning. This is just what I do, and I must go do this. And so I don't have to think about it when I'm in the middle of the tornado. I just go walk.
Yep. And then walking plays into many different areas of well-being, right? It's physical well-being, it can be spiritual well-being. A lot of people find connection in nature, emotional well-being, like just and then for me that's a time when I can think and process and just and breathing, getting out and breathing oxygen that comes from the trees that isn't in your home. It's a different kind of air. So all of those things play into, your physical health, your brain health, so usually when you do something, it ticks several boxes.
Yeah. Yeah, the place that I go walk, there's a lot of trees and there's like a muscle memory there. This is where I go to relax and I either talk to my best friend who lives in another state or like that spiritual practice where I really get grounded and connected and I say, I talk to Helena while I'm out there walking, like you do when you're journaling. And those connections, there's still a relationship there, which is, I find really good for me emotionally. Um, yeah. So these things, and like you mentioned, getting dysregulated when you can't do those things, it really does make a difference in how I feel. Like if I get really sick and I just can't go walk, it has an effect on my mental health to not be able to do it.
hmm And for some people, it's something that like I knit or, I, there's all kinds of different things that might be part of your routine. The second thing I have found for me is uh, reframing my thoughts. So when you talked about like emotional well-being, so one of the things that helps me stay emotionally healthy is to believe the best about people, right? And of course, we have to have boundaries and we need to be able to communicate authentically. But for me, before I even get to how I'm going to communicate outside of, that conversation, it goes back to what am I believing about this situation or about me or the other person in this situation? And so I think thinking about people are just trying to do the best that they can. Maybe I have a narrative here that I'm creating, taking a pause, using those routines and just thinking about, when I'm activated or dysregulated or, and when Jake died, I had all of these like I remember one thing in particular where I journaled was I break Jake so bad that he was unfixable and the only escape was death. And that's a heavy, heavy thought and a heavy burden to bear. And the reframing of that was A, you don't have that kind of power. B, broken people raise great kids. Great parents have broken kids, right? And then I think the third one was like you are not that's shame, right? You are not inherently broken, Pam. Like that's ridiculous. But reframing our thoughts, taking the time, and sometimes you have to write them down. Like on the left side of your piece of paper, what is my thought? What am I believing about this? Is this the truth? And or, you know, even even in that, even in my brokenness, I could reframe it and say, yeah, for sure I made mistakes, right? And I'm human. And so just that practice of reframing my thoughts helps me to stay regulated emotionally, especially when my dysregulation is a result of something someone else did, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I love what you said about believing the best in people. And one time we were talking on the phone and you brought up capability, and that really stuck with me too. Like I think that falls in line with that is that taking another person's capability into consideration when you're trying to believe the best about them.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I think that, like, we all are different and we come into a situation based on our strengths, our experiences, our narratives. And so when in a relationship that doesn't match up, excuse me, it's super easy to get dysregulated and activated. And so, how do we get back to that place of I'm going to show up aligned with my values because I'm accepting that person with all their faults, all the difficulties, believing that they're really trying to do the best that they can as well. And I know there will be people listening to this who have a loved one in active addiction that might think like, but they're choosing to cause harm in my life. And that's where part of the reframing has to come is that A, no one chooses to become addicted. And B, they're not even aware of the harm that they're causing, so it's not personal. And that is, I think, such a great tool, self-differentiation. And when you're being wronged, it's not personal. They're trying to do the best they can. This is the substance. It's not, who they really are. So reframing, even I can even get this way in my healthy relationships, like with my husband, you know, where I'm like, oh, he's so lazy, or, he's just blah, 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 blah. Like he's just. And then I have to go back and go, no, he's a human. This is his personality. How can I navigate this in a different way?
Mhm. Yeah. I think about, like, does this serve me the way I'm thinking about this? So it's not that I'm, um, necessarily trying to make something good out of something that I really truly believe is bad, but can I even think about this bad thing in a way that serves me? Like the way you broke down that thought process about what you were thinking about Jake. And that one thing you mentioned about thinking about how parents who weren't such great parents have turned out great kids, that helped me a lot because I would have similar thoughts. I had my own repetitive ones that would come up for me, and I'm grateful that I had these tools in place when that happened, and I wasn't trying to learn them in the middle of it because it just was so helpful to get through that, and at a time when it's easy for your brain to go really negative, like I'm really intentionally rewiring a few bad habits that I picked up during that time. And reframing's one of the things I write every day about this. Like right now, I'm financially trying to rewire my brain. And I write about that every single day until I feel like I've achieved that. And then I'll move on to something else.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. Repetitive, like practice, 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 right? That's what
Hmm.
it's about. And so we have to practice reframing. And I think writing it down is incredibly helpful. It really is. We're going to behave in a way that follows what we think. What we think is really, really important. Okay.
Hmm.
So, two more that I want to mention before we run out of time. And the third one that I want to talk about is community. And we talk about with our loved ones how important in recovery it is for them to build community, to go to meetings, to get a sponsor, or to, go to a smart recovery meeting or church or whatever that community is. And, when Jake died, there were my book club women showed up for me, right? And they're my ride or die people. They are my community. And I don't think it matters that it's the people in your substance use support group. I think you can find your healthy community. In fact, sometimes the people in my support group aren't the most healthy. I want to hang around with people that are gonna, like sharpen me as a person, that are gonna encourage me, I have a woman that I walk with, and she's, anytime I've like been struggling, I can talk to her and she'll be like, you've got this, Pam. Like you totally have this. So I think you know, that community is the people that when things get hard, you can call them or show up at lunch with them or walk with them and process through that. And they're going to be the ones that are going to make you feel safe, and they will not judge you, and they will support you, and they will be the people in your life that will stay with you and stay steady with you. There's a book that I recommend to all my families that is called The Anatomy of Peace. And it's a book, I'm not going to explain too much of it, but everybody listening should read it. But there's a section in there where this girl, it wants to leave treatment. And so she is running so hard that her shoes come off and she's running barefoot on a gravel road. And the dad is asking the therapist, like, what are you doing? What are you doing to help my daughter? And the therapist said, I have two therapists running alongside of her barefoot on the same gravel road. Your community are the people that are going to run alongside you barefoot on a gravel road, right? And we have to have community. We were created to be in community. We can't live this life by ourselves, right? And that doesn't make you codependent. In fact, there's a really good book by Robert Weiss called Pro-Dependency. And like, we cannot live life by ourselves. Watch the show Alone. Half of the people tap out in the first week because they're by themselves, right? It's just not how we're wired. And so just having that community, but the right kind of community, the kind of community that's going to challenge you, but also, hold you up when you're ready to fall and be you know, your torchbearer, basically.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
Yeah. And then the last one is a sense of purpose. We were talking about that before we got on the podcast. Like, why are you here? Why are you here? And I'm going to shock you and tell you that you were not put on this earth to save your child. And your life is meant to be lived apart from your children. While our family is part of our community, when our sense of purpose is so intrinsically connected with another person, if God forbid something happens, you're going to lose your life along with them. So thinking about, what is my sense of purpose? What is my community? What is my calling? What do I want my future to look like? Who do I want to help? How do I want to influence the world around me? I want to leave. My goal is that when I leave a room or when I leave this life, people will say they are better off because they met me. Now, again, am I perfect? Does that sound ego driven or narcissistic? No, it's a deep love for humanity and a love for people. And it's such a deep love that when I'm with other people, I want them to experience that love. And that's part of my sense of purpose, is just to do my work so that I can really help other people experience like unconditional love and positive regard. Um, and then, of course, my work is I have a deep sense of purpose and did before Jake passed away, to help people. For some people, their sense of purpose is advocacy, or maybe it's helping other couples in their marriage, or, there's a volunteerism, serving the homeless. There's a million things. But Dan Buettner wrote a book called The Blue Zone, and the number one indicator of a long life was a sense of purpose and community. Those two are the most important things. They're also the hardest things to help young adults wrap their brain around, right? Like, and I think it's one of the reasons why, if people especially kiddos, get past, 26, 27, 28, they can start to really develop the sense of purpose, which helps them with sustained recovery. Right? I think a reoccurrence of use often comes with A, they didn't build a community, so they have no accountability. They have no one to turn to when they're struggling. And B, they have no sense of purpose. They're floundering. And every parent's process is parallel to that. Every person that's impacted by addiction has a parallel process of both addiction and recovery. And so this is the parallel process of our recovery, which is like community and purpose, right? So that was what was on my heart today as we were kind of going through what I wanted to share. I think um those are the things that have really helped me stay steady when the boat was rocking so hard that I thought I was going to fall in the water.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so helpful, I think, to have an example of somebody not just telling you things that they read in a book or heard about, but that you're actually doing these things in your life every day. You're practicing them. You've made it a way of life.
Mhm.
Um, so before we go, though, you have a really exciting project in the works. You want to share about that?
Yeah, I am so excited because I work with a team outside of our nonprofit, a team of four, three women, and the executive producer. And we produced a documentary called Together Family Recovery. And this documentary, I think, is going to change the way people look and feel and think about the family and how the family works together towards the common goal of recovery for both the individual, but also, as we defined it earlier, for the family members too, because there is that parallel process. And so we're building a community, and we have uh, we're we have a newsletter, so we'll be doing screenings moving forward. We also have this entered into a few film festivals. So there will be opportunities for the entire country to see this, hopefully locally. We also have an opportunity if you run a nonprofit or a for profit organization that has any contact with people that might be struggling. This, I think, would be a great place to start. So, how do you get started when you want to get well yourself? How do you get started to just learn like what is kind of the big picture 10,000-foot view of family recovery. And this is just an introduction, which will then become attached to a whole back end um, opportunity to engage in resources and a virtual community and all kinds of different things. So, our newsletter, our website is togetherfamilyrecovery.com. And there you will see a pop up menu. And we'd love for you to sign up for that newsletter and get connected to this so that when we have our screenings, you'll get information about that.
That's so exciting. I'm going to put that in the show notes and I'll put information about Thrive in the show notes as well. They have invitation to change meetings going on several times, several a day even, right? Throughout the week.
Mhm.
And is there anything else you want to say before we end?
Um, no, and again, my community, Thrive Family Recovery Resources. Heather, I think you're going to put some of that information and drop it in the podcast so that they can. I do a lot of writing. You can follow me on Facebook. Um, we have a virtual Facebook group called Thrive Family Addiction Support. And yeah, we're super excited. I'm super excited to be doing this work.
Thank you for making time for us today, Pam.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me, Heather.